Welcome, everybody. Hey, it's good to see everybody here as part of the Color Space Cadets. I am Jeff Greenberg, and we are live, as I understand it.
That's what I say.
Jeff, come on, really?
We're all over the world.
Welcome, welcome, season 2.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Jeff. Season 2. We actually got through 1 year of doing these things at 5 a.m.
We got through a year. We're all alive. God bless you guys. God bless us all. How's everybody doing on this fine? Today's Thursday. Fine Thursday.
Well,
or wait, you're in the future, Ross.
I am in the future. Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, it's 5 a.m. here, and I was so excited. I was awake at 3 a.m. for this show. I couldn't sleep.
I noticed the early email.
We do. You notice that email. Now we have to thank John chipping in here, because obviously this is Color Space Cadets. If you've never seen before, is like a friendly in the pub chatting about stuff that we normally do. And FXPHD have been partners with us for a long time for our online videos. That both Kevin has got some HDI training, I have a Resolve training. And John is the co-founder of this organization. He's joining us. John, where are you from? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm actually joining from Jalapa, Mexico. It's actually a small village about on the Pacific coast, about a 45-minute boat ride from Puerto Vallarta, which is a fairly large city on the Pacific coast. May have seen that from the Love Boat series in the past. But it's only accessible by boat. You can't get here by car. There are motos and stuff running around. You maybe hear horses in the background and things like that. But I came down in fall of 2019, was going to head to FMX in April 2022 or 2020. And well, COVID threw a monkey wrench in that, and I just stayed down here. We've got pretty decent internet now. I mean, we'll find out if this goes out, but I've got a local service, wireless service, as well as actually Starlink I added a couple months ago, which has been actually really great. Yeah. So anyway, it's been good to be down here. I'm still actually doing remote gigs for some former clients in the United States. Again, my background is visual effects artist and motion graphics, doing flame and TV commercials in Chicago. And then we started FXPHD with Mike to help other artists around the world get up to speed on various things. And of course, that's where I met you years and years ago.
Yeah. Now, for those of you just tuning in, because you can win a copy of Kevin's HDR training or my Resolve training, you won't have to wait too long. We will be giving out a couple of questions to win those, but there's also be a discount code that we're going to give out as well. You can grab that and you'll get 20% off any of the training from my training or Kevin's training. Jeff, where are you, man? What's happening? What's happening in your world?
I'm currently in the middle of nowhere, Delaware, which is a technical place. Nobody knows really where Delaware is on a map anyway. But before I sit back and throw praises at John, I'm going to ask him, the local hooch, is it Racia? Do I have that right?
Oh my God, how did you do? Yes, it is. It's Racia is a drink that is basically similar to tequila. So tequila is an agave-based drink. I'm sure you all know that, but it's based in Jalisco State. There's also mezcal, which is a little further down from Oaxaca, but we have our own variety, Racia, which is from anything like petrol, gasoline, rocket fuel to actually kind of a decent drink. I actually like good Racia. It's really smoky, almost sweet in some ways. They add a little extra smoke, but some of it will eat through a plastic bottle. It's super easy to light with a flame. But yes, that is our local drink. The only nights that I don't remember anything in Jalapa are nights that I've been drinking lots of Racia. Woken up with scrapes on my legs and stuff. I guess I fell on my way home or something.
That's probably why you don't have cars, John. They're using
yes, exactly. It's probably a good idea, right? But yes,
we were talking briefly in the pre-show, and he mentioned where he was. My brother loves the stuff. I'm looking at a bottle. I just texted him. He sent me a bottle of Taberna Los Tres Hombres.
All right. So we get ours in 20-gallon blue jugs, like the water cooler jugs. They basically fill them up with ricea, and then we of course dump it into glass bottles because I'm actually not really joking about it eating through the plastic. At least it takes on the flavor of the plastic, I guess you could say. So ours is, I mean, it's literally some sheds just up the hill, about maybe 20 minutes away from here on a moto, where they make this stuff, and it's not quite probably as fancy that stuff that you have in the bottle there. Not quite as refined, but
it's all right.
I
just, that's the peril of being in the middle of nowhere, Delaware. With the positive side, I can be in Manhattan just a little over 2 hours. Same thing for DC, and Philadelphia, which is where I'm from, is about 90 minutes away. Yeah, I'm hanging out here a lot of remote stuff. Some of it color, some of it editorial, some Resolve switchers for editorial, which is fascinating, and some people who are very, very interested in workflows that can keep them more comfortable in their native NLE. Not that we don't all love some of the power we get in, Resolve as an editorial tool as well as a color tool.
Yeah.
But sometimes
Well,
the timelines don't necessarily have that sort
No,
of space.
we'll talk to that a bit later. And Mr. Shaw, remind everyone where you are and what you've been up to.
Well, we're in the UK, about 20 minutes from Heathrow Airport, just outside London. It's been an exceptionally cold winter so far. We've had not just nights, but days at -4, 5, 6, even -7 one day. So we're fighting the cold. But what am I doing? Oh my God. I mean, this year has been so busy already. So I'm doing a lot more calibration. We're getting more and more heavily involved in remote everything, remote labs, remote grading, remote viewings, remote consultations, remote classes, remote cars. Yes, that's always a bit of fun. That's the Saturday job. And I'm head of color at Mission, where they provide on-set services, DITs, labs, and so on. And so I get heavily involved in workflow discussions, liaising between production and post-production, which is really cool.
There's a question for you. Are you guys doing remote dailies yet, or is all your dailies
absolutely
on site? You are now.
There's still a preference for doing it on site because usually, if you're in the back end of Scotland in a field, you don't really have the connectivity to do a lab there. But we do a lot of labs remotely. And usually that's where, if somebody gets sick or something and you just need, the lab is set up, somebody needs to plug in a drive, and then we can remote in and do that from somewhere else. Sometimes it's support. So sometimes instead of shooting the 2 hours they predicted, you end up with 6, 7. We even had one recently where they managed to produce 11 hours of dailies in one day because they were shooting, I can't say what it was, but they were shooting everything at high speed basically and doing take after take. Animals were involved, and you know how difficult it is to get that one shot with the animal. So yeah, they ended up with 11 hours, and that would be a great time to do some remote stuff.
It sort of makes sense, I suppose, to have these different remote labs that can hook in and dial in. I've been listening to a little bit of testing myself down that same road, so I think it's, it sort of makes sense for these companies definitely to have a backup, because otherwise what happens if your dailies guy or girl can't make it or doesn't get in? Then there's all sorts of trouble, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one step up from having remote support. And I was discussing this the other day. Color is going to be the last thing to kind of become in the cloud, just because of the latency and the problems with getting a grade 1 signal to a local monitor. That we're still not quite there for that yet. But one of the things that perhaps we can talk about in this session is I've been studying the Media Lab's Vision 2030. Anybody come across that, Jeff? Something you know? So
I'm not as bright as you. I'm not as bright as you are, Kevin. I rely on you to give me a briefing on those sort of things.
I mean, anybody can search it, but it's an absolute godsend of a site, and it's growing all the time. It's the major studios in Hollywood got together, Disney, Sony, etc., got together and said, a bit like the Academy did with ACES back in the early 2000s. We kind of know where we want to go, but unless we all aim at the same goalpost, we're just going to be going far and wide. And so they put together 10 principles, which are more than a wish list. It's a roadmap. It's this is what we want to achieve. And if you've got people like Marvel and so on, and Sony, for that matter, setting up case studies where they start walking down this road, and it's ambitious. It's ambitious. The first principle is that everything goes straight to the cloud. So instead of moving data from on-set to a lab or to post-production or anything like that, the first place it goes is to the cloud. And then all of the applications go to the data, not the other way around. So it's incredibly secure and it's incredibly efficient. But again, it comes down to you're trying to remove uncompressed 8K, 12K files. Right now, we just don't have the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah,
but it's very interesting. They've got an anthology. They've got sort of a whole set of symbols to make diagrams, workflow diagrams, and things like that. And it's really nice to have those things so that we can talk the same language, use the same.
Well, the URL, where do we go and find out more about it, Kevin? Where is it?
The website, I'll just pull it up now, but the website is Media Labs. Let me see what the exact.
Just talking on that, I'll ask you, John. Camera resolutions, are we stopped now, or are we going to get more than 8K? Is it going to keep going?
Of course.
What do you think?
Yeah, of course. Though I think it'd be better. I think it's, again, higher bit depth is really what would be really great to have, I guess, overall, as opposed to resolution. I think getting in our capture formats, kind of concentrating on that, because I do think it's enough already. Especially when it comes to production and stuff. But they're obviously there's a financial and business standpoint of doing that in the upgrade cycles, and therefore not to be too cynical about it. But there is some realities to that. But I'd love to see higher quality and higher bit depth and range. I think that's where I'd really like to see the next, higher res, so to speak, higher res color.
I've been in the session where the producer said, we can do anything we shot in 4K. No, well, you don't necessarily do it. It's how you shot it in 4K. There's lots of variables to that. And it's an interesting one. What about in the States, Jeff? Sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead.
Well, as I'm gonna play an interesting contrast. I mean, I've got one of my buddies is he's involved in every single Marvel post-production chain. They're obviously doing as much as they can from the very, very beginning. I'm always, I think, like everybody else, looking at the meat of the market where people are still struggling around color managed pipelines, where the conventional tools, and I'm going to take the base light, I'm going to take the resolves, the nukes out of the picture, where it's a mess. And just for what it's worth, I say this, that it's going to change. It's going to be painful and slow, and it's going to make prior projects a big pain in the butt. On the other hand, I think, Kevin, this is 3 years old, 4 years old, this concept of, well, you should take all of your work and bring it into HDR, HLG space and make all your past work look good. And I'm excited by that. The biggest question is who can provide an easier path for color management.
Well, we do have an easier path. I mean, it's ACES for sure.
Yeah. Agree.
Absolutely,
it's been using it for a while, right? I mean,
absolutely. ACES as the backbone, but getting our tools to plug into that backbone, Kevin, that's like where the pain points are. And when you look at, for example, a lot, pretty much everybody I see now tends to use, say, resolve specific color space transforms over using any of the background full media management, piece. They want to dial it in the way they want themselves. I think that needs to be easier for Joe Civilian, if you will.
I think we need to be very clear that color management has two faces in this respect. The first one is, as a colorist, I sit down and I need to get from camera to display. And so in that case, Resolve is very helpful. It kind of tries to anticipate what you're trying to do, and it works reasonably well. But it's not much good for, well, I won't say it's not much good. It's much more difficult to create a workflow pipeline from camera to editing to visual effects and then to the colorist and then back out. Because if you use a base light or a Resolve as your color management, well, that's not going to be available to everybody down through the pipeline. And that's where really ACES comes into its own, because those tools are in the VFX tools. They are in the color tools. It doesn't matter, with all due respect, doesn't matter too much if you're in a DI pipeline to the editor, because the editor isn't working with original camera files. The editor's working with proxies, so you can make those whatever you like. But I do think we need to be quite clear that color management in a color grading session is not the same thing as color management from camera through the post-production pipeline.
No, it's really, really dead on, spot on. I'm holistically looking at it as, I have a client, they're a sports team here in the US. They're doing fairly rapid turnarounds. And first, we've got to have that conversation just about color management in general, just to speed their process between 3 different cameras and where it's going. And it's just, it's ugly. It's ugly. That's,
it really shouldn't be.
No, it's value. It's value. No, I'm not questioning that for a moment. It's and pardon this, the ease of implementation for the semi-pro. I mean, not everybody has access always to a Kevin Shaw.
Well, I mean, it is, as far as mission is concerned, for example, it is the responsibility of the DIT to lock in that pipeline. And it doesn't have to be ACES. So we use 3 workflows. One is an ACES workflow, one is an Arri camera workflow, and one is a Sony camera workflow, because they all make the LUTs that you would need to kind of follow it through. It's really not difficult. It's really not difficult to implement. It just needs the knowledge to do it. But then it's just click, 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 and you're done. And I would say to anybody thinking, oh, it's not for me, it's too complicated, I don't understand it. It's actually, the reason why I teach it in the 101 classes is it's actually much, much easier and much better for quality to do a color managed pipeline than to not do it. I mean, the pitfalls are way bigger if you don't do it than if you do.
So, Kevin, you're obviously talking about reasonably big shows, the sort of stuff that you're working with at Mission. Whose call is it? No. Okay, so not big shows. But who does it come down to on a show to go, we're going with this workflow, we're going to use this pipeline? Is that, who makes that call?
It's, everybody has to kind of sign off on it, and it could come from the DIT could say, look, we've got a lot of cameras, guys, or there's a lot of visual effects, we should really be doing ACES. The cinematographer very often has a say, in that, oh, I used ACES once and I hate it, I don't want to use it. Fine. Yeah. Or more commonly, it's, I've got this LUT that works on the Arri camera, I want to use that. And I mean, I'm working on a show right now. They're not shooting on an Arri camera, they're shooting on Sony cameras, but they still want that Arri look. So, figure that one out. But then what we do is we also we involve the post-production facility, not so much visual effects because they'll do pretty much whatever you ask them to do. But the finishing house. So whoever the colorist is, a lot of those now have sort of support teams, and we will say to them, if we go ACES, are you okay with that? Or if we're going to do an ARRI workflow, legacy workflow, are you okay with that? So it's bringing everybody to the table and saying, if we all agree on this now, then we're not all going to have headaches later on. If you don't do that, then visual effects are, well, I don't know what I'm really looking at. And editing is saying, well, the visual effects don't match my dailies. And the colorist is saying, well, how did you get that in editorial? You know, what was the path? Who's documented this? Where's the LUT that you used, or whatever it is? And so all of that takes up time. It starts getting ugly on schedules. You have to go back and redo stuff. So we just sit everybody down and say, right, this is what we propose. But to answer your question, DIT. So any show that has a DIT on it, I would expect it to be color managed. If it doesn't have a DIT on it, if it's so small that there's not a DIT, then it's going to be, usually it's the DP, isn't it, doing the whole lot.
Yeah.
And then it's whatever they're comfortable with. And you know, you don't expect a DP to have as much knowledge of the post-production path as he does the optics and the lighting.
Great. So John,
those are shows too, because you know, I mean, I think we take a look at commercials production in the States still, and boy, you know, that's not happening, I would say, in a lot of situations. I'm talking national high-end TV commercials. The footage is just being very similar to what was in the past still, just handed off to a post facility, and sometimes they're pulling the dailies from whatever files they have. There are a large amount of places that aren't using that, and there are many that do, but I'm just saying that I would say almost that's the exception rather than the rule in TV commercial post-production in the US right now. Not speaking of episodics and films or anything like that. Definitely different beast, the size of the facilities they're working on, the size of the editorial houses that are working on them, and depending upon the budget and what's happening with effects, right? Those are all things that might influence that. But sadly, I agree. I think there's things like scripting. I always felt that those are high-end features that I would do, but they're actually kind of lazy features because they make my job easier. And I think of color management of that as well. You know, it's this supposedly complicated thing, and it can be complicated, right? But it's something that really does make your job easier if you tick all the boxes and follow it. You don't have those things of, why is this picture different in my room than it is in your room? I mean, that's stuff you run into all the time. Yeah. So I'm with you, Kevin, on that, and that it really.
No, I get you.
Make your workflow easier, right?
I do get you on commercials, and the interesting thing about commercials is, I mean, first of all, you know, if I have to grade a minute of a feature film, that's I've got to do that in an hour or something. It's not, you know, I don't have a lot of time to work on it. Right. Whereas a minute of a commercial is easily, you know, 4 to 8 hours. And what's interesting about the commercials is, with the whole post-production pipeline, it's still back in the 1990s, because, you know, very often it's not finished in the grading suite like episodic or feature film is. It goes back in and it's finished in a very complex online situation, editing online situation. So yeah, so that's round tripping rather than finishing in the grading suite. So it is a completely different workflow. And I think the reason for that is that commercials don't have a long lifespan.
Yeah.
Everything else that sits on a shelf and has a long-term value, but a commercial, we really don't expect that. We don't do multiple deliverables and localization and all those types of things.
Yeah, and the schedule of the crew who works on it on set too, right? They're on to the next thing very quickly as well. So they can't really, they're not following it on to the next step as well.
Cool, good. So color management is a big thing for 23. Jeff, trade shows. What's going to happen with the trade shows? Now, me thinks it needs maybe a bit of a rethink, but what do you think?
I think the 10 poles in our industry, I mean, there are a couple. For example, I mean, the two bigs that hit for 3 out of 4 of us, John. John, do you get to NAB because of
not anymore?
FXPHD?
Not anymore.
Right.
That was.
Do you go to SIGGRAPH?
That was in the days. Yeah, SIGGRAPH, FMX, and
Do
SIGGRAPH.
you still go to
Those are the
SIGGRAPH?
two.
Do you still
Yes,
go to
yeah.
SIGGRAPH? Right.
Sometimes both
So-
Asia and US. Or,
So I
North
think
America.
the big 10 polls, NAB, IBC, SIGGRAPH, NAM for audio, they're still going to happen. They still have such value of face-to-face. Not that I don't love our virtual Zoom room. I would rather be having some Racia with John, to be honest. And I would like to be pouring shots for the both of you two while we're at it, because I'm heavy-handed in that hand, right? I think, Warren, that it's still magical. I think something really interesting is going on, which is the proliferation of ease of virtual events. This is simple as Color Space Cadets actually is harder to be heard amongst the crowd because it's so easy to produce a podcast, a vlog, a live event that I think it makes it harder from a marketing, from a visibility point of view. So I think that at some levels, the tent poles stay tent poles. I think there will be some new tent poles like VidCon and the like that cause attraction. But I think all of the events are going to happen. Is the turnout's going to be as large? No, it's still going to be about 60, 70%. Are there going to be new ones cropping up? That'll be interesting to see too.
Yeah. And it's obviously, I mean, can they continue charging what they were charging for the room, the floor space, when these companies are going, well, hang on, we've gone okay for 3 years during a sort of a lockdown. We sold some gear. I can't justify that amount of money that we did before. That something's probably got to give in terms of the hosts of these shows as well, isn't it? Otherwise, we're not going to get the manufacturers there.
100%. It'll be very telling who shows up at NAB. Now, I'm going to tell you the ones that I'm sure are. Blackmagic and Adobe, 100% going to be there. Not any chance in the world, because if one of them blinks, the other one's going to own the show.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true. Now, okay. So
you want to go? Want to take it down
yeah.
deeper? Let's talk color.
Well, yeah. I think trade shows.
Yeah, well, it's not. You go ahead, Warren.
Well, I was just going to say, while we're there, is there going to be a colorist mixer? Like, if you're saying there's a bit of a zoo in these type of podcasts, everywhere you look, there's YouTube stuff going on. Are people hankering to get back in a bar with other creative people? And is there demand for it? Because we're talking about it right now.
I think there is, because last year I went to Camera Image for the first time. And that's first of all, there is equipment at the show, but it's much more about films and product than it is about the equipment. But what I found was so great after not having been to a trade show for nearly 3 years was the social side of it. And everybody there said, I made all these, because you can book yourself silly for sort of 14 hours a day there. But almost everybody said, yeah, my calendar went out the window in the first morning because we bumped into somebody and then we went somewhere else with them. And it was really that sort of getting together and assessing things together with people from the other side of the world, people perhaps you've met on forums and things. So I'm very pro having the Colorist mixer, certainly at NAB and the other tent poles, as Jeff calls them.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, we're social creatures. At the end of the day, I don't want to be in another Slack channel, another Discord, right? I don't have Zoom fatigue, maybe it's because I changed my backgrounds too much, but I desperately enjoy being around and talking to other people organically. And I think without those sort of events, they'll happen. I'd rather have them be around our topics than because it's my local car meetup group.
And color people, they're traditionally pretty good social get along type people, aren't they? I suppose because it's still a relatively small crowd if you compare colorists to, say, editors or DPs. which is a much bigger crowd. I know we're growing as a band, but it's still a bit smaller. So it always seems to be a good crowd whenever you go anywhere.
I'd like there to be a lot of couches, a lot of easy, short lines, short lines, some good giveaways. I think that part of it is, I'm excited to hear what we do as far as a colorist mixer. I don't care if it's just a bar and we each buy our own drinks.
Jeff, if it's just me and you and Kevin, we'll be there. Right? The three of us.
Well, it'll be a rooftop. Tell you what we have to do is, if it is just the three of us, we'll start tweeting on the first day and start publishing the first day where it is going to be, because it'll be a rooftop bar. There'll be no bottle service because I can't afford that. And you know, it certainly needs to be that we each have good hangover recipe for the next morning. Because I don't know if you know this in Vegas, John. You probably know this if you drink enough Racia. In the States now, they can send somebody to your hotel with an IV to help you get enough fluids in to lower the hangover pain right to the hotel.
So let's step back. So people probably know FXPHD for doing, like, it's an online university. I've worked with them for a long time. But John, you used to think called FXPHD live at NAB, didn't you? It was was it like a whole day where you'd stream? And we're going back a few years.
We did. Well, that was when it was basically before, right before we started FXPHD. That was actually our idea. It's a live event for 4 hours for flame artists who would come there, and we'd had hundreds of people come to a session there to learn. And that was what I was going to say about some of the conferences. Some of these shoulder events that happen on the larger conferences. There are other little, with SIGGRAPH, there are other little smaller conferences, say the couple days before, or things like us, where again, that was, we started small, and then multiple hundreds of people coming for those sessions on the Sunday before NAB, and then of course the cocktail thing afterwards. To your point, Jeff, it's like I tend to feel like a conference is a really great way to get some brain candy, some brain food, learn new things, especially SIGGRAPH, right? Where you're maybe going to paper presentation to see what's actually coming down the road next and be aware of, things like how our neural engine is going to impact VFX or even color grading right down the future, things like that. But the moments I remember as far as being the most valuable for me from a personal and even business standpoint are those personal connections at the fringes of the show. Afterwards in the bar, over dinners or something, or over gatherings. So yeah, to your point, I really agree with that. And yeah, with FXPHD, seeing our start effectively at one of the conferences at NAB, right? It's nice to see a return of these. I think I'm looking forward to it. I'm pondering coming down to Australia for SIGGRAPH Asia in December, as well as heading to FMX as well as SIGGRAPH Los Angeles. So maybe 3 this year just to make up for lost time.
Well, right. It's the funny thing is those after parties sometimes in many ways are more valuable than the floor itself. And it's that socialization. I met the CEO of Focus, the Scarlett, hardware, and such a down-to-earth person. And we just got to talking. It just turned out 2 people introduced me, and I threw down a side idea around some AI stuff, and it has some legs for them, and I'm thrilled about that. And those are, I think, the organic things that we don't see if we stay inside of our suites. If we always see the same people in and out. And I think that's one of the beauties of these events is we get together with people who have similar interests, and that's certainly not our spouses.
The world feels a lot smaller to me. The world feels a lot smaller to me when you come around from these international conferences and so forth. It's actually really, from that standpoint also, it's just a really good feeling. Like the pressures that I have as an artist in the United States are the same pressures that the artist has in the UK and Australia and India and whatever, same with colors, right? There's something about that bonding that we're all kind of going through that's also a really great aspect of it from just a personal relations standpoint.
Brilliant. Let's talk a little bit about where we are with HDR. I'll start with you, Kevin, because you obviously get your training with John at FXPHD. Is HDR now a set standard in the UK for any sort of show, or is it still something that depends on the deliverables? Do they need to deliver it, or you think it's set now, set in stone?
Well, it depends on the studio. Most of the streamers will insist on HDR and SDR deliverables. The traditional broadcasters in the UK, not so much. But some of the Europeans are insisting on it. So it's coming slowly, but it's usually still SDR and HDR. And for me, that's why color management is a must, because to do that as two separate pipelines is silly. But most of the streamers, I think there are still they take it on case by case basis, but their preference is to have HDR and SDR.
Mexico, John, what's the deal? Is Yalapa all UHD, HDR? I would say, was it no?
Yeah, I think I have the best. I have the LG C2 OLED, which is probably the best one in Yalapa. And that, but no, there's no. Let's just say. But actually, that's not really fair, because many of the brands, they do have actually 4K TV sets. There's no terrestrial broadcasting right here. Nothing. It's all other Sky satellite service or streaming services. So actually, people probably are actually, unbeknownst to them here, I'm sure many of them watching HDR on Netflix and Disney Plus.
I counter it, because when I was in Madrid, we're going back 2019, this is at Technicolor in Madrid, and half of their work was doing Spanish content, and it was huge, like shows just for Netflix, for the streamers. So are you seeing a lot of local content for drama, for streaming shows?
On Netflix for certain things that are being done in Mexico City, and things like that. Certainly those post-production, my friends who work there and the contacts who are doing color there are definitely doing that there. It's just again related to the streaming services here in Mexico. It's a little bit different here because of the income and the cost of streaming. A lot of people don't do that, right? So they're the consumption, like I say, is generally probably going to be on Sky or a free service like Tubi, which I don't believe they have HDR content. But certainly post in the big markets here. There's not a lot of post going on in Puerto Vallarta at that level in this area, right? But in Mexico City, certainly.
All right. And Jeff, so obviously run my Resolve training through FXPHD as well. Where do you think Blackmagic or Resolve's going, or any of them for that? Adobe, are they all going to the same road where they want to do everything and rule everything? And where's it going to go this year? I think it's software.
Well, I just want to throw in one little thing about HDR. One really little thing. It's small and it's in your pocket and it's mobile, and it's just the proliferation of mobile devices has changed the landscape. It's really there's an interesting gulf there. I think our big places, all of our network outlets, all of our streamers, whatever we're calling them, all of our theatrical, of course HDR is going to be there. Of course we're going to go through our back catalog. But what's fascinating is every laptop now has HDR, and Kevin is one of my several guiding lights about this. Where I go and I see a screen and I go, "Hey, Kevin, what do you think?" And he tells me, "Yeah, that's garbage." But I mean, I don't even bother him.
He did that to me too.
Right. I don't even bother him though. I don't even bother him about the laptops, because like all the laptops except maybe Apple's are going, "Oh yeah, we have a 650 nit display," and I'm going, that's barely 500 nits. That's you're just putting it on because the consumer doesn't get it.
Except for OLEDs, and the OLEDs at sort of 500 and 600 nits, beautiful. And I just recently saw the latest monitors from Flanders, the DM220,
Phenomenal.
And even the DM220 is fantastic. It's a great replacement for the DM240. but they have a DM160, which is a smaller display, obviously, but it's based on a laptop screen, I think. And the HDR rendition on that, I mean, I put it side by side with a Sony HX310, my sort of reference grading monitor. I mean, you could make decisions on that 16-inch for onset for a DP. Fantastic, absolutely, and that is a big breakthrough, I think.
But I think this is the, it's the adoption rate, it's the, 4K, 6K, 8K doesn't count. It doesn't matter. What matters is at some level the deliverable. Yeah, I want the 6K plate, 8K plate to reframe for the VFX plates. Yeah. But my eyes, with or without these, unless I'm looking at a large screen, I can't see 4K and 2K as a difference. I certainly can't see it on my television that's far away. Right. So I think mobiles need of value for HDR is huge. And so the Blackmagics, the Adobes, the variety of people out there with these platforms, because this is where you wanted me to lead to, they all want that lion's share. And I'll give you a great, not color, but huge deliverable item is in the space of 18 months. All our major tools, except for one, really, they're all capable of doing multi-format deliverables. We'll do square, we'll do vertical, we'll do horizontal, and we're going to automate it as much as we can. And the more versioning we can do, if you want that sort of predictive piece, I'll give you just one of them, OpenAI, everybody's talking about ChatGPT. They had one about 2 months ago called Whisper. And Whisper can sit back and not only do recognition, but do translation. And they're doing it in near to real time, super quick, super powerful, high accuracy rate. As an add-on, I don't know anybody who really wants to do the captions by hand. They're lost when it comes to language changes. And are we 36 to 48 months, 3 to 4 years for something well shot, well handled to start doing some level of speech synthesis and morphing faces so the language just happens? Man, that's wonderful and scary. Wonderful and scary. And there are a lot of products out there in that AI space that I'm just impressed and blown away. Those are the spaces where Adobe and Blackmagic are doing some nifty things. And there's some great tools in the marketplace. One I'm biased to, because I'm doing some work with them. I think Color Lab's doing some really great stuff. I just think the idea of some of its color management and matching doesn't replace a colorist at all. Just accelerates to the fun part of color.
Yeah, it's very interesting what he's doing. That's Dado, isn't it? Doing that.
That's Dado, yeah. And
we should get him on for a chat and find out where that is, because a lot of people have interest in where that's going. And there is obviously that argument, well, is it going to replace our jobs? Or, if you're the dailies guy, you're not going to, I've heard the worries about that sort of thing, but there's so many others. For me, I get 10 days to grade a movie, and 3 of those is always doing matching and balancing the thing out, if not more. Just getting everything straight before you even start to do anything creative. If I could buy a bit of time back by doing, I'd be all for it. So in my eyes, more time to do the cool stuff and not the nuts and bolts, which does take time.
That I think is the that's the appeal for me around AI in general. Is I don't like personally the artificial intelligence. I like the assistive intelligence, because it still needs me as a creative. It still needs me as a technician to go in and get it when it fails. When the Tesla fails, it turns out in some of the independent tests, it might run down children. I'm just saying the auto drive might run down children. That last mile is a tough last mile. Sorry, last kilometer. Last
Well, I'm
kilometer. My
worried.
fault.
Mate, I got in a Tesla the other day. What happens if your screen fails? You're done, aren't you? That's it. It's just one. There's like a big iPad in the middle. It's very clean. It looks great, but what are you doing? So you'd be tapping it, driving along.
But that's the same thing. Like I'm deep into Chat GPT. I'm deep into these AI tools. And there's some very nice ones. But for example, and John, you know, when you're roto work, when you have to go and do roto work,
exactly.
it's like the thing
That's
you want
a
to
great
avoid.
example. Yeah.
You want to avoid with every iota of your being. Whether it's the depth mapping that lives in Resolve and is in other spots, whether it's the background removal, they're all using the same generalized engines. And when the engine fails, the artist comes to life of having that, oh, wait, I can do a quick rotomat here, combine the two, do a minus here, and I'm done in minutes versus what I'm dealing with today. I couldn't, I'm sure if I were to watch somebody else's work that was really good, or I had a faster system at my disposal right now, I would be getting more out of, like, say, the depth map in Resolve, which is wonderful. But I had to take some stuff over to After Effects because the roto brush is just fast, and I was doing in 5 minutes what was taking me way too long to get unsatisfactory results other ways. So, yeah, please.
We've got a question. Resolve on the iPad. Kevin, is that something could be utilized in dailies or on set, or how do you see it? Are you excited about that, or?
Honestly, I haven't. No. I haven't even looked at it, to be honest. I can't answer that question. For me, the future is not around the iPad. It's around interchange through the cloud. So sharing projects, collaboration on projects. And we're seeing Adobe and Blackmagic and just everybody is doing more and more stuff, cloud-based, collaborative. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of this year. The iPad, I'm not really sure who it's aimed at, to be honest.
Someone who doesn't have a Windows or a Mac? I don't know. I mean, is that like
maybe
the M2 iPad
impressive.
Pro?
Yeah,
the M2 iPad Pro. You could throw in a speed editor. You could throw in a keyboard, and you have a 10 to 15 hour system that can edit ProRes. Somebody out there has figured out a way. I think it's through mapping. I wonder if Blackmagic will turn it off. You can get to the edit page. You know, you can get to the Fusion page, which scares the living blank out of me. I think Resolve on an iPad's fantastic. Fantastic from a technological point of view.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right?
I think it's wonderful. I just haven't.
You could lift it, Kevin. Remember the day where you needed like a forklift to move your Resolve system around?
Yeah, it was.
What about client review stuff too, potentially? Like if you had a mode in it, like a light version of it where you were working in.
You don't need Resolve to do a review version. And if I need to do something nowadays, I just remote into my machine at work. So I don't really need the iPad, but I'm sure it does have a use. I'm just not quite sure what it is.
I was thinking that a client could leave comments on shots and things like that. You could use it in a collaborative workflow. That's all. Yeah.
But I think 1,000% the cloud, 1,000%. We're going to see interchange. But when I look at asset management systems as an example, they're a mess. They've been a mess for years. And I hope somebody figures out how to do two things: make it affordable and is disruptive enough that makes it comfortable for us to unify it. I walk into groups of 3s and 5s and 10s and post-production departments, and they're being pitched, oh, it's only 100, 200 per user, and this group, you know, per year, but this group is looking and they're like, that's like $5,000, $10,000 for something we don't own, we can't control. And like, I get it, they're renting a blade on AWS times 10, it's a profit center, but there's a huge amount of people who will struggle unless something is so amazingly disruptive that they gotta go to it.
I 100%
yeah,
agree. 100% agree. And I think that the roadmap, the 10-year roadmap, and it's, oh, by the way, it's Movie Labs, not Media Labs. Just put that out there. But that roadmap is all about that. And I think we will have that breakthrough media asset management. And you talked about AI, and I was talking to somebody, an engineer the other day, and he said, well, there's deep learning, there's machine learning, and there's AI. And they all do slightly different things. But even machine learning can just, like you would say, go through a script. And you put that into an asset management system, and it can now find sound bites. It can now recognize voices. It can recognize faces. And so all that search stuff, that is so rich. That is cool.
So the two, if you haven't seen it, there's a group called Reduct.video who thought they were going to really be, their first thing was, I think, trying to face down Descript. If you're not familiar with Descript, you can feed it an interview. It's phenomenal for a podcast. You can say, hey, could we remove all the linking words and goodbye, all the likes and the ums and the ahs? And it's got some voice synthesis with some training, and you can start putting in stuff. That's amazing. This group Reduct has found they've got a crazy secondary market because you feed 10, 20 hours of interviews, and they've got some semantic analysis going on where you go, hey, show me, can you give me all the clips where somebody was happy or unhappy with our product? And now a human being's never heard it, and it's mining through based on the semantic meaning of words, not their sounds, even if the sounds are wrong. And they're spitting out on the other end, oh yeah, here's 30 sound bites from customers out of 10 hours of material.
Wow.
That is cool.
That's the future.
Yeah.
Right, it is. I like that. I like that. So John, you've kindly giving a 20% discount to anyone who wants Kevin or myself training. You go to fxphd.com and use the code cadets20. But you are also giving away a copy of the Resolve 18 and the HDR training. Is that correct?
That is correct. One of each.
Do you want to explain what people need to do? I believe you have a question for each.
Okay, I do have a question for each. We haven't been through these before. I don't have a slide for this.
Well, you can do it verbally, and people have to type the answer.
Yeah,
they type the answer in the YouTube chat.
And believe me, I had no idea that Jeff would ask me about this, but this is related to one of the first things Jeff asked me about where I'm living today. And my question is, which of these tasty beverages is not made from the agave plant? A, Ricea, B, Mezcal, C, Michelada, D, Tequila. And you'll have to help me because I don't have the chat up. So
just repeat the question.
So here it is again. Which of these tasty beverages is not made from the agave plant? A, Ricea, B, Mezcal, C, Michelada, or D, Tequila? And
I think we should be forced to try them. I think we should be forced to try them all. And that's how we should determine.
Right around the corner.
Oh, John, I got to find you if you're in Vegas. I got to find you this year if you're in Vegas.
That'd be a reason to go.
And the second question.
Okay, the second question is for the Resolve 18 Mega Pack.
This is for the Mega Pack.
Yeah, and this is, when did FXPHD release the first ever online course with Warren? A, 2002, B, 2006, C, 2009, or D, 2012?
Wow.
Do you know, Warren?
Mate, I was younger back then, wasn't I?
So it's either
haven't changed a bit.
2006, 2009, or 2012.
And I may add, if you win this, there's a couple of lessons in there with John and I working like editor and colorist from Australia to Mexico, where we went through the whole pitfalls, didn't we, of trying to color and grade and upload and muck around. Yeah. It's good fun. But the only way we did it like we were trying to do it on a real job. And I think we were talking about earlier, I think it's the way forward. I think it worked really
I think it's a
well.
really well, yeah, I think I mean, there's some hitches in it. You really need to set up your project, you need to set up your workflow from the beginning in the correct way to make sure. But Jeff was asking about my latency, and I'm about like 90 milliseconds to Mexico City, and you're halfway around the world. So there were instances, obviously, when we were trying to do stuff live across the way. We picked a data center, I think, in Singapore, halfway between us. We picked whatever Amazon was closest to you, maybe even Sydney, I guess. But I think that's one of the really cool things about what's going on in Resolve right now. And I think more than ever, I think many facilities are still doing remote working even after they can go back to the offices, but many post facilities aren't requiring people to come in. They've got Teradici sessions set up to Flames and other systems. So I think that kind of thing, this collaboration that we cover in the Resolve course, Warren, is really going to be key moving forward as part of Resolve.
I would have killed for the two of you to have published all of your speed bumps along the way, because we would have all, right? Because you're like at the extremes. I mean, it might have been easier to go through the center of the planet than around it.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you know?
Very,
do you guys
very
know
true.
what do you know what the flight distance is? Like, do you know what the mileage distance is between the two of you? I'm just curious.
Oh
well, I do not know, but the flight was about 65,000 pesos. I checked the other day. I don't know. What is that? There's multiple cities.
So all I know is in the States,
Mexico to Australia.
That's like a dozen eggs right now in the US. Maybe two dozen eggs, because eggs have gotten super expensive.
But how long is the flight, John? How long would it take you to get there? How long would it take you to fly?
Oh, it'd be longer than from Chicago. So it'd be, it'd be close to 24 hours for sure. Same thing with all the stops.
See, that's a lot more.
I mean, that's not that
90
bad. You're used to that.
milliseconds.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Exactly.
So John, the answer to question one, the drinking, what was the answer there? We've got a couple of answers here.
Of course, the answer is michelada, which is generally a mixture of beer and tomato juice or clamato with spices and Worcestershire sauce and things mixed in as well.
Fantastic. So that
was
goes
kind of
to that goes to Heather. But now Dickie Bird tells me she is in Mexico, so she maybe have a slight head start there.
Heather.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Well done, Heather.
It's actually been.
She has thanks for joining.
She has visited me in
Brilliant.
Before.
Okay,
so,
well,
we had our own
head start
mixer here under the radar.
Brilliant.
VFX artist, VFX colors mixer.
Good.
I guess would be.
Wow, that's good. We like that. We like more mixers coming back on board. And the first color correction class online in the world was 2006.
2006.
Well done.
It was.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that goes to Joanna. Excellent. Well done. You can contact us. We'll put an email in the chat there. Contact us. We know who you are. We've got a record of the chat. But if you didn't and you want to jump on board with this code to get 20%, it's running for 10 days. You can share this code with your friends. We're quite happy. Put it on the internet. You can share it if you like. Jeff, sorry.
It's okay. Do you mind if I throw an extra code in there? I don't want to take any of the shine from. Listen, John,
No.
I should be asking you. I just wanted to check.
Please. No, please.
Hey,
please.
I reached out to Dado while we were here. If you put in CSC Feb on Color Lab, John, you talk to me. We'll work that out for
I'm
you,
really
okay?
happy you shared it.
No, right?
Now I'm really happy you shared it because I've been
But CSC, no, seriously, John, I'm dead serious. But CSC Feb will get you 20% off of Color Lab products through definitely through all of February. We'll see if it works on March 1st. You can tell your friends about that.
Yeah. So Jeff, can
sir.
Can we maybe do a Space Cadets on it, because people are asking about it? See if he's keen, or you can talk about it.
1,000%. 1,000%. It'll be either he or myself, and we'll set up the day when this is over.
Let's lock it in, yeah.
I think it's some very impressive technology, solves some major problems, and pardon me on this one, Kev, it's just more democratic solutions, ones that are, the us common plebes some days who have to use Premiere or After Effects. That's all.
I have
I'd
nothing
work
to say
plebes
on
in
the
there.
matter.
Spanner, plebes. Really, cricket bat over. I would have gone cricket bat over baseball bat, but that's me. It's bigger,
Based
it's
on what
wider.
you're saying, give me a call. You know, we can save just so much pain. It's not difficult, really. It's really not difficult.
Everybody's got my kids aren't home yet. My kids aren't home yet.
There's
Laz.
mine.
You know,
This is
listen,
my
I was
little
going to
one.
run a course on it, and I couldn't
Yeah.
fill a day with. If you just want like the how do you do it, get it done. I am going to work on a video, but it'll be so short. This is so easy.
I'd love to see the notes because I'm sure it's fantastic. The knowledge you have around those pipelines is just gold. And I mean, there's a lot of very, very smart people publishing information out there, whether it's people like Darren Moyston, whether it's Colin Kelly. But Kevin, the stuff that you do is just so boots on the ground, real world pipelines. And I love the fact that you think it's really easy. I love that. I'm sure it is when you explain it, but that's part of your gift, my friend.
You know,
Right.
but you don't have to understand it, Jeff. You just have to go click, click, click. If it works, right?
Check out the reviews on this course on fxphd.com, fxphd.com/HDR, you know, and I'll give you backs up what Jeff, saying. Like,
Right.
And it's
Kevin.
colorlab.ai, colorlab.ai with a U in there, COLOURLAB.ai.
Right. That we're going to wrap it up. We've been an hour. It's been fun. Looking forward to 23. We'll hopefully catch you guys on the next one. We'll catch you in Vegas. We said it here. We're going to do some mixer of sorts, even if there's only 3 of us at the rooftop bar. We will be there. I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like, you know, forget the one last year. It's like 3-4 years since there was a big trade show. So there's going to be a lot to catch up on. John, thanks, buddy, for coming on board, sponsoring.
Oh, thanks for having me.
iColorist.
Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks to obviously to all the sponsors of iColorist that help make these things happen. Thanks to Gigi in the background for producing, Jeff for coming on, your insights, Mr. Shaw, Aaron, thanks for being there, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. And